Hi, my name is Ivy Alvarez, and I'm a writer. I write poetry. I was born in the Philippines and I grew up in Australia, and now I'm here in Cardiff in Wales. I guess I've always been a reader, which was a great influence on me for starting to write. I've always read from when I was a little child, and I guess that encouraged me to create my own writing. And from then on, I've received encouragement from teachers and won prizes at school. And I think that's really important for writers who are starting off. And from there, I got poems published, and then eventually my first book, and then my second book. So that's how I got started with writing. After I had a few of my poems published, I put them together into a shorter collection called a chapbook. A chapbook is usually about 10 poems put together. And so my first one was called, now I have to remember, it's, what was it called? It was, oh, that's right, Food for Humans. So that was just a collection of poems that I thought were my best ones at the time, and I put those together, and that was published in Melbourne. And after that there were 2 other chapbooks, and then from that experience I put together Mortal, because I felt that I had a better idea of how to structure poems to put together a bigger collection. So after I decided to put together Mortal, I guess, the first impetus for that was I was doing my honours degree at the University of Tasmania, which is in Australia, and I was there in the honours room, and there was another postgrad there with me who was a writer herself. She was a poet, and she saw that I had a bunch of papers around, like my poems, so I had poems there and a couple of short stories, and she said, "Can I have a look?" And she was reading through it, and she was putting together the poems, and she said, shuffling them together, and she gave them back to me, and I took them away, and I went home and I read through them, and the way that she ordered them I found really interesting, and it found to me that the poems were talking to each other, like they were having a conversation, which I'd never seen before. And the fact that she took the time to do this with those poems gave me the idea that I could do something similar with that with this next work. And at the time before that, my mother had been in hospital, and so I was worried about her, and worried about my relationship to her, and the possibility of her dying, and that fact sort of made me realize that I wanted to capture that, and I wanted to write about it. And so she was recovering from that when I decided to put together Mortal, and so it gave me some perspective and distance to write about it. But it was a good thing for me to write about, because it was a way for me to process what had happened, and I think that was why I wrote Mortal. So I was writing Mortal, and I decided, well, I need some money to do this, to continue writing it. And in Tasmania there's a number of grants that you can apply for, and so I put together just an application. It was just not very much money, but I thought it'd be nice to get the validation as a writer. I think that's just one of the ways that as a writer you go through. And actually that helped me it helped crystallize the ideas for Mortal, that it had this structure. It needed the structure of the underlying myth of Persephone and Demeter, but I wanted to do it in a way that reversed the idea. Instead of, the myth goes that Demeter rescues Persephone from Hades, who lives in the underworld, but instead of Demeter doing the rescuing, I wanted Persephone doing the rescuing. So the daughter rescues the mother from the underworld, from death. And yeah, that was a way to structure the book for me. And had I not applied to do the grant, I wouldn't have put together the book, I don't think. So it was a good way to make that happen. And I did get the grant, thankfully. So yeah, that was good. So this is a poem from Mortal, and it's called Of Gods and Insects. A drift of wall dust, carcass husks, strung, juice sucked, small wings beat slow, slower than breath. One thing picks through the webs, another twitches nervelessly, invoking death, who comes, swift electricity to one's nakedness, gathers the threads, clicks on the loom, shears off what is not needed. After I wrote Mortal, so that was that got published while I was here in Cardiff in 2006. Before that, I arrived in Cardiff in 2004, and during that time I applied to do a residency in Scotland at Moniac Moor, which I think is quite close to Inverness. Anyway, so I was there, and I was with a group of other writers, and I read a newspaper article, and something about that article just, I don't know, I found really compelling, and I couldn't get it out of my head. And from that article, I mean, I can't really talk about it very much, but from that article I decided to write this book called Disturbance. It became Disturbance. I didn't have the title at the time, but I thought it would be interesting to write about this crime. Not this particular crime, it became a bit more generalized than that, but that was the start of it. To write about this crime from the viewpoints of the people who either heard about it or witnessed it or had something to do with it, whether they were police or the priest who was at the funeral for the people who died, that kind of thing. And yeah, so that was the impetus for it, and that's why I wrote the book. This is the first poem from Disturbance, and it's called Inquest. Members of the family wept as the coroner read out her pleas for help. Nothing softened as they cried. The wood in the room stayed hard and square, the windows clear, the stenographer impassive, the spider under the bench intent on its fly. A small domestic scene. Blood comes out in cold water, he said to me, almost tenderly, from the doorway, as I held the ice pack to my cheek. Looked at my blouse in the mirror, fingered the stains.
Okay.
Okay, you...
Yeah?
Yeah, okay. So now, I guess I've lived here in Cardiff for almost 10 years now, and I'm just about to head off to the Southern Hemisphere for a big move, and I am planning to get a couple of my poems, collections of poems, shorter collections of poems published. These poems I wrote during the writing of Disturbance, when it was just too much for me to keep writing about. So I hope to get these collections published, and then we'll see what happens when I'm back down in the Southern Hemisphere. Yeah, so I hope to keep writing. I hope my third collection My third full-length collection is a good one. I haven't got any ideas yet what that will be, but yeah, I'll just keep writing poetry. You can tell it's cold from what I'm wearing.
San Diego, okay. Yep. I've got friends I've been to yet, that's radio.
Oh, yeah.
Camping out.
Yeah, my mother used to have a house there.
Okay.
Really beautiful in Brea Desert.
Yeah, right. Yeah. We went out with something
Oh, the pressure. Yeah. So you know where it happened. There you go.
Thank you.